The community is unhappy after a recent change to the upgrade system. It feels like upgrade drops are just worse. Today we will look at some results to see if there really is a problem. Alongside the addition of the Mercy system for requisition pools, we saw a curious change coming in for upgrades. Previously, it was pretty simple. For every upgrade, you had a jar system with a specific number of successes and fails in the jar, and you started pooling them out. Once the jar was empty, it got refilled with an equal amount of successes and fails, and you started pooling them out again. This meant that the maths behind the system was very precise, and I did a bunch of videos earlier this year digging into this. It was a solid system that simply worked. However, some people didn't like how it felt because as you were swapping between upgrades, it felt like you could have a horrible streak of losses, even though in reality, you were always getting the same number of upgrades as anyone else over a period of time. It was actually very fair. But now the system has been changed, and you're guaranteed success within a certain number of attempts, very similar to the Requisition Pool's Mercy system. This still allows for lucky streaks where you can keep achieving consecutive successes, however, it comes at the cost of lowering the base probabilities for getting upgrades, with the hope being that the Mercy system improves the overall effective chances for getting the upgrades. Today we'll take a look at whether this actually works in practice by doing 100 drops of each type of upgrade and campaign, and then seeing what the results look like. As I mentioned in the Requisition Pools video, statistics is a funny old thing, and I am a very small sample size from all the players, and even though I'm doing 100 pools of each drop, this is still quite a small sample size compared to doing a whole year of worth of drops. So we can expect some variance from the numbers that the developers have given us, but we should roughly be in the same ballpark regardless. And I say this before I've even started the experiment, just so it's clear there's no bias here. So let's briefly look at how the new system works, and we can see where it's working. We get upgrades on any page of a campaign except for the very first page of Indomitus campaign, where you don't get any upgrades except the Makotep shards. Anywhere else, and you will see this little dice here, which is an incredibly important little icon for the upgrade system. Inside, it shows you the base chance of getting any item, as well as the Mercy system working. So here, in what I call the early Indomitus rewards, because they only cost 5 energy instead of 6, we can see that we have a base chance of getting this item 75% of the time when we do a pool. However, with the new Mercy system, we are guaranteed to get it after 3 wins. And we can also see this in the next item. Very similarly, 75% chance and after 3 wins. So let's see this in action. We will do one pool and see if anything changes. We managed to get a drop. And we can see that the chance to get another drop hasn't changed. So let's continue doing some drops until we at least fail one. Okay, we get a fail, and if we look at the Mercy system, it still hasn't changed, and that's because you need 3 fails before it increases on common items. It will increase straight to 100 at that point, but it's difficult to replicate with commons because you generally get an item before the 3rd fail. So let's take something that's a lot easier to judge. If we look at uncommons, we can see that we have a 60% chance to get an item, and the Mercy system still triggers after 3 wins. Let's start raiding on the item, and it's not going to be long before we hit a failure streak, where we get 3 fails in a row. Looking back at the Mercy system, we can see it has now increased to 15%. And just note that this percent increase changes depending on the item. We'll see that in a bit, so just remember that this one was 15%. Let's go one more, and it's another failure. Now we can see the Mercy system is up to 40%, and that means we have a 100% chance to get the item on the next drop. Let's check. Yep, success. If we take a quick look and compare Cut Skoden with Sybil, we can learn a couple more things. Firstly, I haven't done any cut pools today, and already the system says I have an increased 11% chance to get cut. This tells us that the Mercy system works even after you've closed down the game and reopened it, or when there's a reset between days. Then, if we go and look at Sybil, we can see that she doesn't have an increased chance of getting her shards, and that means the increase is not shared between nodes. Finally, we'll look at one more thing, and this is a rare battle in a regular campaign, and therefore you have a very low chance of getting the item. In fact, it's only 20%, but the mercy system triggers after 1 win, and that's very different from the 3 wins we saw earlier. We can see that this one is already triggered, and we have a 5% increased chance to get the item. This is different from the increases we saw before. Let's do a raid. We'll fail it. And now we can see that the increase is up to 13%. With it being 5 previously, this also tells us that the increase is not linear. Otherwise it would have been 10 or 5 plus 5. Let's do another one. Again, another fail. Now we can see the increase is up to 30%, so definitely not linear. Let's do a raid. One more fail takes us to the 80% increase, and that means we have a 100% chance to get the next item overall. And we do. If we check the mercy system, everything is reset and we start again. So let's quickly summarize what we've learned. The new mercy system for upgrades is independent for each upgrade. All the information is stored between sessions, so it doesn't reset when you switch off the game, meaning you don't lose your streaks between days. The mercy system adds a different percentage onto different types of upgrades, and when it's adding a percentage, it's on a sliding scale, which means that after one failure, you get a little additional percent chance, but it quickly goes up to 100%. And before we look at the results, it all seems to be working okay, but it's definitely a lot more complicated than the jar system we had before. So is it better? Now that we understand a little of the actual system, let's take a look at the results and see if it is better. We're going to take a look at each campaign in order and at each type of upgrade. We will order the table in a couple of different ways, and this will allow us to see some trends. Let's start with the Indomitus early campaign. That is the battles that cost 5 energy and only give us common, uncommon, and character shards. Firstly, we can see the effective reward percentage that the developers gave us. So we expect to get commons 75% of the time, uncommons 61% of the time, and characters 35% of the time. I did 100 pulls of each, and the results were that I got common 78% of the time, which is 2.7% more than the developer said I would. But for uncommons, I only got them 57% of the time, which is 4% lower than I should have got. And characters, 29% of the time, which is 5.7% lower than I should have got. But before we get too angry and raise the pitchforks, let's go through the rest of the numbers and then we can start drawing conclusions together. Here are the results for regular campaigns. So that's any of the non-mirror campaigns that cost 6 energy to battle. One note here, I didn't do 100 pulls of the regular legendary shards because there's only one node available, and I just couldn't face doing any more than I already did. Feel free to ignore this piece of data if you feel I didn't do enough with it, but I actually think it's fine. Now let's look at the mirror results. And I think the biggest thing to note here is the poor results recorded with common, uncommon, and rare upgrades. Those first two being the worst results I've actually recorded in the whole system. Finally, we can pull up the elite results, and we can see a lot more green here. So the percentages are definitely a lot more positive at this end of the table, including an impressive 9.9% higher chance to get legendary shards from elite campaigns, either regular or mirror, than the developer said I should. I'll also sort by rarity as well if you prefer those results. Okay, so what does this actually tell us? Well, firstly, I think the biggest thing I need to point out is that even though I said there was likely to be a possible statistical variance, I believe the results here are showing a variance that is simply too high to be good. But what I am most concerned about for the majority of players is the upgrades that will be grabbed by most new to mid-level players. That's the common, uncommon, and rare upgrades from the Indomitus early, regular, and mirror campaigns. If we isolate these results, I think they speak for themselves, but if I have to call it out very clearly, we shouldn't be seeing this many negatives at a point when most people are coming into the game and grabbing these upgrades. In fact, I will be very surprised if there isn't a change to the system or the numbers behind the system in the next set of patch notes. In fact, for me, I would actually revert the whole system and go back to the jars. But let's see what the developers do. I don't know if there will be a change or not yet. We'll all find that out together next week. But if there is, I'll redo this video based on the new results and we can see if it fixes the problem. On the other side, if I was you, I would be hoarding legendary events from the elite campaigns because they seem to be a bit positively broken right now. In fact, I would just stick with the same advice as always. Try and get all your upgrades from elite campaigns as much as possible. The odds are just so much more in your favor over a period of time. And that's everything for today. I've been really surprised by the results, but I do know that many of you won't really be surprised as you've been talking about how bad this new update has been since the patch was released. Let's see if there's changes coming to the system, because right now it does indeed feel like something is not working quite as it should.